Hey gang, this is Mr. Schmidt for October's 21st Stormtime meeting. We spent some time talking about the quiz review, so I want to make sure there's a recording of it, especially we had a couple of people who had tech problems. I want to make sure you have it available. We're going to start with talking a little bit about the last slide here and the biomes review, and then we'll go on to the next one here. Okay, so first of all, the quiz is going to be about 15 questions. It'll actually be closer to 10, but some of them have multiple parts, so that's going to kind of keep things moving here. Okay, so we're going to talk about scientific method, misleading graphs, metric system, lab procedure, using data to make a graph, systems, ecosystems, lots on biomes, including altitude and latitude. Okay, so the first, well, let's not go here yet. Where Great. So first of all, your assignment yesterday, fill this in. Okay. This link had lots of great information, including like exactly what this is. So I really wanted you to focus in on where in the world these things exist, because they're supposed to reinforce the latitude and altitude of different places. I also suggest you do all of this on a piece of paper so that it is readily available for the quiz, because I will be asking you about some characteristics of each biome. Okay, so make sure you fill this out completely and neatly so that you can refer back to it during quiz time. Okay, so when we did this, or when I made the quiz for this week, what I did is I went through the modules and I clicked through each assignment. And that's how you should also approach your study. Okay, so very early on we did the science preview. Okay, and hopefully that opens up here. So the science preview gave you a nice little glossary of scientific terms, and then asked you about the scientific method. Okay, so yes, you should know these words and be able to do a multiple choice question around those words and their definitions. Okay, and then I just kept clicking through the modules, going down the list. Okay, this includes looking at things like misleading graphs, being able to graph something in a pie chart for like the types of sodas you like, okay, and the metric system, okay. So I wanted to take a minute and answer one of these questions because it is something you definitely need to know all year long, and it's something that's going to appear on this quiz and a number of other quizzes. So hopefully you have this filled out and turned in and it's all good. And I'll just go over one of the examples here as we look at this. Okay, so this should have boxes filled in for kilograms, and then on down to the base units, centimeters, millimeters, those types of things, okay? So we have the larger objects and the smaller objects. And the important thing is this will tell us how many decimal places to move something. So, for example, let's look at this 14 kilometers to meters. Okay, so what I'm doing here is, as you notice in the thing I posted, we're converting all these units. So if we were 14 kilometers to meters, okay. Now, remembering back at that slide we had here, okay, kilo is going to be up in this box, and meters is going to be over here. So we're going to actually move it 3 times, 1, 2, 3. So right now our decimal place is not shown, but the decimal should be right there. Okay, and if we're going to move it 3 times from kilo to meters, 1, 2, 3, that's what we get for our answer. Okay, so that's the type of thing we're going to have to convert on our quiz. So we'll have a couple of questions like that as we go through these different setups. Okay, All right, and then we went through all of those. Let's keep going through a couple more examples here. Okay, so like I said, that first assignment, we went over hypothesis, controlled, independent, dependent, and your lab procedures. And then we did that again with your paper airplane. So you had hypothesis. If I fold the paper airplane, then it will go twice as far because it is more aerodynamic. That is a good hypothesis. It's an if then because statement. That is a educated guess. So you read about paper airplanes, and then that gave you something to say about paper airplanes based on a question you had or I posed. Okay. For the paper airplane, there are some things that you controlled. You always used the same paper. You always had the same person throwing it. So those things did not change. Okay. So these did not change. Okay, the independent variable you changed. Okay, so in our paper airplane, like maybe it was the number of times you folded it or the number of paper clips you had. That was your independent variable. And then this one you measured. So that could be how far the paper airplane went. Okay, or for example, with our eco columns, each one of these has a different amount of water. So the independent variable is water. The dependent variable is how high the plants grew. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of different examples we can use for this. You need to be able to identify what was changed. Okay, that is the independent variable, and what was measured, that is your dependent variable. And hopefully things like how much sunlight it got, how much soil it started with, all of those things would not change, and those would be your controls. Okay, as you went through, whether it was the paper airplane or your eco column or any lab, you're going to have a procedure that if you handed it to anyone else in the world, they would be able to do the same lab and get the same results. So it should be a numbered list. Okay, it should be detailed and enough that other people can repeat it. So when I give it to you in the quiz, I'm going to say something like, write a procedure for how you tie your shoes. And I'm going to be looking for these things in terms of a good procedure that is formatted correctly. Okay, then we had a couple different assignments about graphs. I'm going to be asking you to make a graph. And a little side note here, I'll go over again at the beginning of class, is when I ask questions on Canvas that are not multiple choice, that are not writing things, typing things down, if you need to draw something like a graph, then what you're going to do is you're going to come in here and then put in your image. So as with every day in science class, you should start with a notebook. You should write out what you're doing, and then you're going to take a picture of that with your Chromebook, and then you're going to insert it into here. Okay. If for any reason your Chromebook shuts down or it stops working, make sure you email me still within this timestamp, and then I can still count it towards your results. Okay, so that was a graph that had your title, your axes, okay? All the numbers are there, and all of the data points are there, and they're all appropriate, okay? You should also know what kind of graph you're drawing, okay? So if I say things like, here are everyone's favorite foods or favorite sodas, then you'd give them by percentages, because it's what the percent is good for pie graphs, okay? If I said how many people like tacos as opposed to it's their favorite, well, you might like tacos and like hamburgers. So you can't put them all into one pie chart. You would have to split it up into a bar graph to show different groups. okay? So in environmental science, we might do like how many pea plants are growing. That would be a good bar graph. If you were saying what was the percent of moss covering the dirt, that would be a good pie graph, okay? If I said how much the pea plants grow over time, okay, that would be a good line graph. And then if I said something like the number of pea plants versus the amount of water, okay, so we have the number of pea plants, which is going to be our dependent. The amount of water is going to be our independent, and so you're going to make a scatter plot. So you need to be able to identify those different graphs as well, okay? All right, so we just talked about metric system. Okay, like I said, I'm going to give you data and ask you to make a graph, and you're going to take a picture of it and then post it into the Canvas quiz. Okay, open systems, both energy and matter. Okay, so that would be like me. I take in oxygen, I give out carbon dioxide, I take in sugar, I give off heat. Okay, so matter is coming in and out, energy is coming in and out. I'm an open system. All right, a closed system, only energy goes in and out. Okay, so energy can go in or out or not matters. This is going to be some sort of closed container. Okay, so if you had something like a, what could we have? A pot that had a lid on it, then, and you take that pot and you put it on the stove and there's a lid on it, the stove is going to push heat and heat energy into the pot, but the water inside the pot cannot leave. Okay, so that would be a closed system. Okay, an isolated system is theoretical, but we can get very close to it. Okay, so this would be like a hydro flask. You put your hot water in there and you seal it up with your lid. Okay, the water does not go in or out. The heat from the water does not go in or out. It is an isolated system. Okay, and then we had altitude. Okay, so how high something is in terms of like the mountains. So if you're on the ocean and at sea level, it's a low altitude. If you're at Mount Hood and you're at the top of the mountain, that is a different altitude. And that is going to change, that's going to force the plants and animals to change. So you're going to have different biomes based on the altitude. The other big one is the latitude. Okay, so that is going to be, are you close to the equator or are you close to the North Pole? Okay, or are you close to the equator and close to the South Pole? Things at the equator have a very different biome, and there are going to be very different plants at the equator than there are at the North Pole. Okay, so that is, again, the latitude is going to change what kind of ecosystems exist as well. Okay, and then we had 2 full days worth of notes about different biomes, including that assignment that hopefully you're just finishing up. And I will say a few things about those as well. Okay, if you notice when I went into the modules, there was this key for the matching activity, and we went over that in class the other day, but you can go back now as part of your review and look at these things. So I might say something like, where's one that has an easy one? All right, what type of biome has very low salt concentrations? Okay, and then you'd say freshwater has very low salt concentrations. Okay, what biome covers only 45% of the Earth's surface? The open ocean. Okay, so those are the types of multiple choice questions you should be able to do about biomes. And we have a lot to choose from, and I tried to narrow it down a little bit over here. Okay, so again, the key here is to work your way through the modules, make sure that you have all of the notes done and all of your assignments done, and either it's all in your brain or it's all in your notebook, and you'll be ready for the quiz. Okay? All right, so we'll have a little bit of time at the beginning of class. If you have any questions, we can spend 20 or 30 minutes in class going over everything. And then when all the questions have been answered from you, then I'll be asking questions on the quiz, and we'll do that then. Okay, so I hope that gives you everything you need to know. As always, email me if you have any questions, and have a good evening.